Hi, it's Pastor Steve in beautiful Visalia, California. This is Happy Thoughts for the week of August 26th. Today, I am going to set up several happy thoughts to come. Marilyn and I will be on vacation soon. We're going to take 4 weeks off. And during those 4 weeks, you're going to be able to see a series of interviews that I've done with different staff members about their own experiences in times in their life when it seemed like God was really particularly close, or when they had a breakthrough in their faith. And in order to better understand what they're saying, or maybe not better understand, but to understand it from a theological perspective, this week and next week, I'm going to lay out the basic theology and understanding of the church about how it is that God communicates. The word for that is revelation, right? How does God reveal God's self to the creation? And it's good, I think, to have this information and kind of roll it around in your head and your heart before you watch those interviews and hear people talking about really intensely personal and powerful experiences, because you'll be able to kind of slot it in your mind, and you will have thought for 2 weeks about the idea of how does God communicate to people. So the answer of how does God reveal God's self to creation comes from observation by people of the Judeo-Christian faith over thousands of years, and then latter-day theologians have sat down and noted, right, here is in our history what we can say for sure are the ways that God makes God's self known. So this week I'm going to talk about 2 of them that happen to everybody, and that no one can necessarily be immune to or reject or whatever. They're universal. Every human being who lives for very long enough to come into self-consciousness experiences God's revelations in these ways, although they may not note that it's God. And then next week we'll talk about more distinctly Christian and Judeo-Christian ways that God has made God's self known. So there are 2 ways that God reveals God's self universally to every human being who comes to a certain stage in their own development, and they are natural revelation. And natural revelation has to do with, as the word suggests, nature and the things of nature, and the second is through reactive emotions that are a part of the DNA of human beings. So let's look at them one at a time. It's fascinating to me. I hope that it's interesting to you too. So natural revelation, the easiest way to understand it is if you see a sunset, or here in California, if you're at the big trees or you're at the ocean and you're caught up in the power and the majesty of nature, and you have the feeling of assurance, if you're a Christian, or at least a pulling towards an assurance of the presence of a higher being. It goes under the general category of the more you know about the natural world, the more I think it is reasonable for people to come to understand, it sure looks like there is a plan. And if there's a plan, there's probably a planner. And that happens in a lot of different ways for people. Again, depending on where you live, nature has its own show to put on, and the handiwork of God moves the heart of God's creation in human beings. It can also work the other way in kind of a less poetic and artistic way. It is the fact that nature sometimes overwhelms us with floods and famine and earthquakes and erupting volcanoes. Right? There's all kinds of ways that nature puts human beings in a place where they have to acknowledge that as powerful as we are not all powerful. And that can serve the same purpose of the Creator, which is to say that when those things happen, people understand, or at least long for and hope for, a higher power, someone, something that is more powerful than whatever is erupting in their life from nature. Now, that isn't to say that God sends earthquakes to cities to make 1 or 2 people particularly aware of his presence. It's built into the design of all nature. And I don't even know that built into it is the right word. It is the fact that God created all that we experience. And because of that, God is imbued in all that we experience, and in our experience of the things of nature, we're bound to at least have the thought that there must be someone or something that is a higher power that has actually planned and is at the wheel of this creation. I've known scientists, I've read scientists who come to the conclusion that it's all just a cosmic accident. And really, my own belief on that is a defiance of what is obvious to every other human being, and why scientists can look at the way the natural world is constructed and the way that human beings are constructed, how they can look at the uniqueness of the earth and its development in all that they know and conclude it was just a freak accident. They talk about a leap of faith for Christians to believe that Jesus was the Son of God. The leap of faith that a scientist has to take to say there is no God, it was all just an accident, is unbelievable. And it seems to me to be stubborn denial of an obvious truth. So God reveals God's self by the very nature of God's work in constructing our reality. That's natural revelation. It has a positive side. Sometimes we're just overcome with the beauty and the power of nature, or of a newborn baby, or any number of things that kind of melt our heart. And sometimes we're frightened and made to know our place in the scheme of things, and made to hope for a higher power by the other part of creation. God is mysterious and powerful in ways that frankly just frighten us sometimes. That's one way that God reveals God's self. And in the Christian tradition, there are people whose story is that they became Christians. They started on the road that led them to commit their life to Christ because of a natural phenomenon. One of my best friends was out before sunrise at his ranch, and he watched the sun come up over the horizon. He was just overcome with the power of it all, and that was the day that his spirit gave itself over to worshiping and serving Christ. It's a really powerful thing. The other kinds of revelation, so there is natural. The other kinds of revelation are internal, and again, they're a part of the norm for all of humanity, regardless of time or place or nationality or religious tradition you're born into. All of those things don't matter. It's a universal truth that God has revealed in these ways. And the best way to put it is that human beings have a hope that is able to withstand, frankly, astounding loss and pain, and still maintain its fervency and its belief, right, that somehow, some way going forward, things are going to get better. That hope in humanity for ourselves, and very frequently for other people or other situations, that, well, doggone it, this thing has happened, and we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to find a way to go forward and make it better. That's intrinsic across the board, right? Individuals vary in the seasons of their life how much hope they are letting lead them. But all of us have within us just a gritty determination and a fundamental belief that somehow, if we can make it through the storm that surrounds our life so often, things will get better. That is another way of saying we all experience the core of the Christian faith, which is at the gravesite where there is or should be no more hope, believing against all evidence that in the future there will be resurrection and life that comes from that grave, right? So that inalterable, unconquerable hope of human beings throughout all of history, no matter how dire their circumstances, that is a way that God reveals God's self, because God is the source ultimately of all hope. And it is the truth that the character of God in so much as we can know it, expresses itself in resurrecting that which is assumed to be dead or which is in fact dead. So that's the positive part of the emotional revelation of God. The second part of it is almost universally, except in the case of psychopathy or some other mental illnesses. And in those cases, before the mental illness sets in, this still exists. Human beings are constructed in such a way that when we do wrong, we feel guilt. When we act wrong, when we harm other people, when we act out of ignorance and then later learn that what we did was wrong, all those kinds of circumstances, right? When guilt sets in and when guilt happens and we regret what we have done or said or allowed to happen, and in that guilt, we make the fundamental decision to try to be better going forward and to try, if we can, to make what we have harmed better. That's a revelation of God's Spirit that is a part of all of us. We're made in the image of God. And that means we naturally regret when harm has come to anyone, ourselves included, and we especially regret it deeply when we're the cause of it. So all of us experience these things, the beauty of a sunrise and the fear of the power of nature. All of us experience times when everybody's betting against us, but we have hope that the thing can still turn the way we want it to, or that we're somehow going to make it through. And all of us have had times when we regret the way that we are or the things that we've done. It's not the normal thought process for non-theologians to realize these are times that God is incessantly, always talking to us and revealing his self. When you experience those reactions and those emotions, you're experiencing what God has constructed in you in such a way that it makes you aware always of the need for a higher power. Hope and guilt both operate in this way. They make us desire for God to help us. When it's hope that we can change the situation or live through the situation or get through whatever is tormenting us, we reach out to God almost instinctually. The atheist in the foxhole. There is no atheist in a foxhole. Everybody, when they're facing death, prays that God will deliver them. And the same thing is true when we wander around broken because we have harmed someone else or caused harm to erupt, that desire to clean up the mess, to make it right. Those are distinct characteristics that we know are the characteristics of God, and we have them because we're made in his image. So revelation, the question, how does God make God's self known to God's creation? Well, in these ways, natural revelation, God is made known all the time. Many people don't attribute those experiences to God, or they fail to make the linkage to God, and that's the power of the church, right? Our job is to point out to people, oh yes, that's absolutely God, right? It may not be church on a Sunday morning with everybody acting a certain way, but when you have those experiences of the soul and the heart and the conscience, those are experiences of the living God. So that is one set of revelation. Next week, we'll talk about special revelation and other ways that God has been more specific about his message and about what he asks of those who follow him and have a relationship with him. So kind of a lengthy explanation, but it took me 4 years of seminary to get my mind wrapped around some of that. If you have questions or comments, please email me at pastorstevevumc@gmail.com. I'll be happy to dialogue with you as best I can. I am not a dyed-in-the-wool theologian, but I have studied those things, and I do experience them from a faith perspective. Next week, we'll talk about the other types of revelation, the more specific types of revelation. And all of this is part of a thought process, I hope, to help you understand your own life in a more faith-filled way, and also to open up your understanding of the stories that are really powerful that you're going to hear in the interviews that I've done with folks on staff here at VUMC about their experience of God. So I hope you're in a good place today. I hope you are filled with hope for a great and bright future. And I hope that you'll live into that a hope for the future by making the decision to be kind and to be graceful and to be Christ-like in your relationship with other people. Have a great day whenever you happen to view this video, and I'll talk to you next week. This is Pastor Steve in beautiful downtown, beautiful suburbia Visalia, signing off.